And there are brave men out there that will earn a lot of money out of this. I mean, someone once said to me, no one ever earned any money on a level playing field. And to a certain extent, it's right. People are going to earn a shed load of money out of this situation. If you've got money out there and you can invest in property, there's going to be deals to be had.
Hey guys, it's Matt Haycox here, and we are here for another one of my lockdown podcast specials. I've got today with me entrepreneur James Constantinou, who you guys probably recognise from Channel 4's Posh Porn. If you don't recognise him, James has been on the TV for 8 series right now. He's a property developer, and he spotted a gap in the market when he read about asset lending in one of the Sunday tabloids back in the day. So since then, he's developed a pawnbroking business with multiple destinations around the south of England, and he's just been telling me offline about his growth up north as well. So I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get going. As has been the case in a lot of these podcasts we've done of late, we're streaming it live while we record onto Facebook and YouTube. So if you see me and James kind of getting involved in the comment box or looking like we're distracted with comments, that's because we're trying to make these as interactive and as knowledge-packed as possible. So please forgive us. It is for the greater good of us all. So, James, welcome to the show, buddy.
Cheers, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for being here. I mean, listen, obviously, I've given a very brief introduction to what I'm sure is a very long and exciting career and life. So why don't you take over from me and tell the guys where it all began and what we don't already know about you.
Okay. Well, I mean, it started really in 2000 and early 09 is when I sort of started developing the company, but really the crash of 08, 2008 that really affected the global markets, but also here in the UK particularly bad because we're obviously heavy on the banking sector, and that was heavily affected. So I was involved in property development at that time, and a lot of the finance companies and a lot of the banking that was sort of backing that pulled the rug on a lot of people, and that left that market sort of dead in the water for the time being anyway. And I was looking around for something to do, and really I think it was the back of it's the end of 08. I was reading an article in, I think it was one of the Sunday supplements, it might have been the Times or something, about asset lending and how I think there was some appetite for it, mainly in America, regarding securing loans for mainly art, to be honest with you. But I sort of got me thinking anyway. And I started thinking about here in the UK, why isn't there more of that type of lending, and why didn't it actually happen? Why don't people lend against assets in the way that the article was talking about in America? So I started thinking about it, and then I started thinking about all the assets you could potentially lend against, like the art and the wine, jewelry, obviously, watches, cars, everything that we do, the boats, even the planes. Why are there people out there not set up to lend against these types of assets? And at that time as well, what really spurred me to think about that was the fact that I had a lot of friends that were in the property market that were basically going sort of bankrupt, to be quite honest with you, over a very short period of time. And they all had expensive cars. They built up a lot of wealth over sort of 10-year period of doing some good deals. They'd all got Ferraris. They were living in £5 million houses. They were playing golf with their bank managers on a Sunday. They had really good lifestyles. Their kids were going to private school. I'm living in a very affluent area in Weybridge in Surrey, and it's those sort of individuals are that's where they're here in numbers. So it's really about just starting to think about that and how I could potentially. I was quite lucky because I came out of the property market fairly unscathed. I just completed on a couple of big deals, and I had the money sitting around not doing anything. And I had a lot of friends looking for cash, and I was really looking for a vehicle and a way to lend them that money. And that's how it all started, really. I read an article in the Times, as I was saying, and really I started looking at, well, how can I do this quickly? Well, could I write some contracts? How could I get this money or funnel it to people that need it? And then I started thinking about pawnbroking. It was a ready-made vehicle. The contracts were there. So I contacted the National Pawnbroking Association and told them what I wanted to do. I think they thought I was a little bit mad, to be quite honest with you, because there was no one in the sector doing that. They were doing the gold and the few rings and the gold sovereign coins.
What's the lowest value asset that you would broke?
Well, there isn't a low. I mean, people sort of asked me that, and would I set at the beginning? We thought about it, and I didn't want to turn people away. I felt that that would be bad business. I'm paying for the rent, the rates, the staff. Why turn people away? If someone leaves one of my stores unhappy, or they've been refused a loan, they're just going to go to a competitor. Now, if they get asked by a friend or a member of their family, where can I go and borrow against my car or my art, they're going to not think of me next time because I've turned them down. So I thought it was very important to service as many people as possible, to be quite honest with you. And I won't turn anything away. We've got loans for £100, but
Really?
equally we've got loans for hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds with some individuals. So I'm not sort of snooty about the assets that we did. It doesn't matter to me. It's all business, and to be honest with you, it's irrelevant whether it's £100 loan or £100,000 loan. It's all good business.
And obviously, you started in 2009, at a time that the world was falling around and sort of falling down around us, and people were probably clambering for cash. I mean, do you think that start time was instrumental in your success, or as in did that really accelerate things for you, or would you have been just as successful if you were 5 years earlier or 5 years later?
Well, I mean, I think obviously if you're starting a business, any business that you start, if you're starting at a time when there's a real need for your services, then obviously you're going to get a foothold in the market. And that's basically, I mean, some of these pawnbroking businesses and my competitors have been in this space for 100 years. But instantly, because I took hold of something that just wasn't there in that space at that time, it sort of launched me up to the top of the scale, really, if you like. And it did give me a foothold in. And yes, the market's played a major part in that. I can't deny it. Would I have been where I am today? The crashes of '08 has come and gone. So yeah, I would have been there. But business certainly over the past sort of 10, 12 years has been fantastic due to that great head start I had because I was at the right place at the right time. And that, as I said, is important, really.
Perfect. Guys who are watching this live, by the way, thanks a lot for all the comments that are already coming in. I will get to as many of these as I can. I just want to try and keep a bit of chronology to the interview and the conversation, and then when some of your comments are appropriate to drop in, I will certainly drop them in. So please don't go anywhere, and if you want them answering, make sure you keep watching. So James, tell us about the TV show. I mean, how did that come about? Was that your idea? How long had the business been trading before you ended up on the telly?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say it was my idea. No, it wasn't my idea. No, we got approached by a production company. I think Channel 4 were looking for to do a documentary because of the situation economically. They wanted to do a documentary on sort of alternative lending. So a guy was sent out, a very nice guy called Bill Burrows. He's like a journalist. He's also he's on the credits of the show. His task was to find a alternative lender in the pawnbroking sector that was quite interesting, and he phoned me up, or their researchers phoned me up initially, and you don't really. I wasn't TV ready at all at the time, to be quite honest with you. I'm probably still not, to be quite fair. I mean, I was dreading the idea of going in front of the camera.
I don't think that's something we ever adjust to. I mean, I know you're 8 shows in. I mean, sorry, 8 seasons in. Obviously, I don't have anywhere near as much experience as yourself in front of the camera. I mean, I know I'm a lot happier now, 2 years on from when I started. But I'm never happy. I mean, I've just
No.
looked at myself on this live stream now, thinking, "Fucking hell, my hair's missing, my face."
Yeah, there was. I mean, it was like fear of dread come over me when he sort of phoned me up and he said, "Well, I want to come down." I said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And he said, "Well, we want to just sort of come down and talk about filming." And I was thinking, well, why would they want to film down it? I didn't quite understand, to be quite honest with you. So we agreed to sort of begrudgingly to let him down and sit with us for a day. And he was sitting there with his notepad. And because you never really know what sort of how they're going to portray you, do you? I mean, there's a lot of these exposés on the box, and you're always that worry they could put a little bit of spin on it, and sort of really could ruin your business if they put the spin on it in the wrong way. But anyway, he come down and he just pulled me to one side. He said, "Listen, I think this is going to be fantastic, and it's going to be great for your business, and I think the public would really genuinely be interested in this business." And I thought, well, that's I'm not so sure. And he said, "Well, let me do a little pilot. We'll film you for 3 days. do a little pilot. We'll show it to you. It'll be like a little 20-minute montage of and see how you feel about it. So he put this together, and after they filmed for 3 days. They sort of edited it after about a week, and I saw the clip, and I was really impressed. And I thought, actually, do you know what? People who are outside of this arena and don't understand it would genuinely like to know the workings of it. And it went from there, really. We agreed to make a 1-hour show, which was the pilot show. It went out on Channel 4. I think it was on a Wednesday or Thursday night. It was prime time TV, about 8 o'clock. They had massive viewing figures at the time. I think it's about 3.5 million viewers. And they were obviously chuffed with it, the performance of it. And they sort of commissioned a series, the first series. From there, we thought, God, this is and after that, I mean, the phones just rang off the walls. We couldn't cope. Literally, we were diving around trying to answer the phones, and it just transformed the business, to be honest with you.
That you've kind of answered my next question, which was really going to be, what kind of, tangible difference and impact did you see on the business, and how long did it take to kick in? Because one of the things that's, that I'm constantly preaching about, to my audience, and that I thoroughly believe in myself, is the power of the personal brand, the importance of branding and advertising, and growing an audience, so that they can then ultimately be monetized. You've obviously had, the holy grail of opportunities, really, with having a long-term TV show running in complete parallel to your business.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't possibly put a price on it. And to be quite honest with you, if you had to pay for it, it wouldn't economically work out. I mean, those shows, they probably cost 150 grand per hour to make, and they made nearly 50 shows. So you'd have to spend I'd have to spend over 5 million quid putting that together. 5 million pounds of advertising. I can't think of another arena that you could spend 5 million quid in, and to get that sort of exposure, you couldn't really. I mean, it was fantastic, and it was instant as well, which is great. It's as soon as the shows go out, the phones ring. And I mean, it's all about branding, and I suppose social media plays a major part in certain brands. If you get that right, that can help you. There's lots of different ways of getting there. But obviously, the pinnacle is the TV, because if you're on one of the major channels, then you've rung the bell, really, haven't you?
No, completely. Tell me about some of your customers. I mean, do you find? Is it sometimes hard to? I don't mean convert, because obviously once they're in. But is it conceptually hard for wealthy people, who are asset rich and cash poor, to get their head around the concept of pawnbroking and assets? I mean, I can almost imagine that they wouldn't have an issue selling it, because that's almost like a normal thing to do. But but the whole concept of pawnbroking feels alien and potentially almost like offensive to them. I mean, how do you combat that?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the major things about the advantage. Well, we set out even pre-TV show to try and combat that, and just to try and brand ourselves more like a bank. If you had an asset and you wanted to borrow some money, come and see us. It's instant. It's far less complicated than a bank. You don't have to fill out long, the reams and reams of forms. There's no credit checks. And comparatively, on a short-term loan, it's cheaper than the high street bank. There's no two ways about it, because there's no setup fees, no redemption fees. If you want to borrow money for 2 or 3 months, there isn't a bank that can compete with it. So we were just trying to get that message out there. And I think that was one of the things that the TV show did for us instantly, because what the viewer saw was actually the people that were on this show actually are just like me and you. They're not, they're not up there out of reach. They're just normal people. They do the same, they breathe the same air as us, they eat the same food as us, and they got the same troubles as us. Just think they might have a few more quid, some of them, but they still have the same stresses as everyone else. And this show really sort of just showed how well the business was set up to facilitate some of these people's requirements. So, and it really made people, and I think the viewer saw that actually there wasn't anything wrong with pawnbroking, and actually it's not really any different. You're not embarrassed when you walk into a bank. You ain't running out the bank with your coat over your head, are you? And really, there's no reason why, if you've got a coin collection or a Ferrari and you want to come down to Prestige and borrow some money against it, why should you be ashamed about it? I think there's a very old, misconception with pawnbroking, and maybe there was a little bit of it in the old days. When you put on a Friday night, you go and get your weekend suit out of the pawnbrokers. It's a little bit of stigma associated from the sort of Dickensian view about pawnbroking, but we really aim to dispel those myths pretty early on, and with the help of the TV show, I like to think that we did it. And the feedback from other pawnbrokers in the country, and there's thousands of them, is that certainly that TV show did do that, because they're now getting clients coming in saying, "Oh, we've seen you guys on the TV," whether it was them or not. We've seen pawnbrokers on TV, and we love what you're doing. We've got this and we've got that. And I think it's just I think it was a great thing for the industry as a whole, to be quite honest with you. And that's the feedback I've got from the clients, and it's the feedback I've got from other pawnbrokers. Although at the very beginning, I think other pawnbrokers were a little bit skeptical of what I was trying to do. But I think once they saw the show and they saw the benefits to the industry, they all embraced it. And now they're trying to emulate pretty much what we're doing in terms of the assets, because there's money out there to be made.
What's the biggest asset that you've lent against, or the biggest loan you've done, or have you got a crazy story you can tell us about?
Well, I can't mention too much about the individual assets, but I can't mention the name. All right. Well, then let's put it this way: we've had rock stars, Arab sheikhs, we've had all sorts of people coming in, millions of pounds worth of rare and wonderful. I mean, I've had a page from the Quran that was worth nearly £1 million. There's been some amazing items come in. We've had obviously a lot of royal memorabilia, items belonging to royal members, royal family members. We've had rock stars coming in with guitars and all sorts of stuff. There've been some really, really interested people coming in to see us with some amazing assets, and it's all confidential. But the thing is, you never really know who's going to come through the door, and it never ceases to amaze me, to be quite honest with you. And I think that's another thing the TV show has done. People have realised that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, you can come in, and these are people that haven't really thought about borrowing money in that way before against the assets.
I think what people don't appreciate is that no matter how many extra zeros you get on your income, we all probably suffer the same problematic mindset, with money, and we all suffer the same problems, just for bigger assets. I mean, as I was saying to you before we came on camera, and as a lot of my audience know, my day job, so to speak, is lending. And I remember the first time I had a Premiership footballer put towards me for a loan, and I forget the exact specifics, but it was something along the lines of, he needed 100 grand tomorrow to buy a new Range Rover, or to pay for a new Range Rover, and he had 50 grand for it. He was 50 grand short, but we're talking about a guy who was on 30-40 grand a week. So
could have just gone in goal for 10 minutes, couldn't he?
Well, I was asked to lend him the money for a couple of weeks, and offered the money at some exorbitant rate of interest, but basically said to the guy, "Listen, this is crazy. Don't borrow the money off me. Why are you not waiting 1 week or 2 weeks to buy the car then? Because you've probably got 6 cars in your drive anyway." And he turned around to me, he says, "I can't do that." He said, "If I've told the lads I'm buying this car, if I turn up for training and don't come in this car, they're going to laugh me out of the changing rooms. I don't care what you charge me." And literally,
sounds all right.
I mean, there's never any one answer or one right answer to anyone's scenario, really, of why they're selling an asset quickly or why they're prepared to pay a high amount for a loan. And just because someone is purportedly wealthy or is very asset rich, doesn't make their situation or problems any different to someone with a lot less affluence.
Certainly, yeah. And I mean, we see it all the time. And yeah, as I said before, you never really know who's going to come through the door. It's amazing the types of clients you get to meet. And I suppose because we're in the sort of high end of the market, right at the top of the spectrum in terms of the assets we deal with, you get to meet some real interesting people.
I'm going to throw some questions to you from the question box now, just to say hello to a few people who've joined us. Hey Chantel, hey Paige, got a few regular faces who are coming back to these lives now. Kenneth Ford says, well, his actual words are, "Is social distancing fucking up your business, James?" But
Well, the business, we're classed as the same. We're regulated by the FCA, so we are actually allowed to, and we are being asked to go in and service clients with loans, because it's important that people have funds and can even go and buy food. To be quite honest with you, we've scaled down the business. We've not actually physically opened the stores um, whilst this has been going on, but we are running a telephone skeleton service, and we may be going back into one or two branches on Monday morning to enable some people to get their hands on some cash. It's all done behind the glass, so we're not actually coming.
I was going to say, how are you actually servicing and adapting to these people? I mean, are you actually able to? I mean, are people having to invite you to the house, leaving an asset on the doorstep for you to examine, or?
Well, we're quite lucky in the way we're set up. So we've shut down all the retail side of the business. We don't, obviously not retailing anything. We've got an online store, which is great. So people can still buy stuff online, and we send it out in the post. And because we've had such a high demand, whilst we've been closed down over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've had such a high demand of people requiring money, and some of them sound quite desperate, to be quite honest with you. We're going to put a couple of guys, maintain the social distancing, and put a couple of guys behind the glass screens with some strict enforcement in place, and let people come in with some assets. They'll go away, and then we'll transfer funds to them later, but we won't be coming into physical contact with anyone. And I think it's a responsible way of doing it. And we're quite fortunate that we're set up like that. Not a lot of the other competitors are, because they're open, so their stores are open. They might have a desk there, but we've got we've got some facilities where we've just screened off totally. So it's going to be a very scaled down operation. It's going to be for a lot of it is for our favoured clients who are out there and need to come in and have literally run out of money. And that's the story we're hearing, and it's becoming more and more apparent over the last sort of week or so. The people now, this is really beginning to bite. The first week or two, people may have had money to pop to the shops and get some supplies, but now there's some people out there in some serious trouble, and we've been called upon to sort of service those clients. It's very difficult for us because obviously there's a moral aspect to it. We've got to be as careful as we can. We've put procedures in place to ensure that our staff are kept safe, and also the public that come and meet us, as I said, behind the screen counter, so not coming into contact with us, are as safe as they can be while they do so. But yeah, I'm hearing a lot. It's this is one of the things about what we do. We do hear it straight from the horse's mouth. You're not having to watch TV or the news to get a general feel of the economic situation. We're hearing it on the ground as it happens.
Cool. And Joe McCormick, I mean, they've asked what type of thing do people specifically pawn. I mean, I think we've kind of answered that question really from the fact that there is no specific thing. There's no right answer. It's from £100 trinkets through to multi-million-pound private jets.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you never can tell what's going to come through the door. I mean, obviously the bigger assets usually land on your desk in the form of an email or a document, but yeah, it can be anything. It can be a Bugatti Veyron, or it can be a 200 quid watch. It really doesn't. You really don't know. We've had some film memorabilia. We've had all sorts of stuff come in, and I couldn't guess on a day-to-day basis. It never ceases to amaze me.
Paul Devine said, "Have you seen an uptick in business given the liquidity squeeze?" I mean, obviously we've just talked a little bit about the Corona situation and how you're adapting. I mean, I guess it's probably hard to exactly quantify, because for any uptick in business, you've probably lost some business from some people who weren't totally desperate and can't get to the stores. But I mean, are you seeing a clear increase in need in the same way you would have done back in 2009 when you were setting the business up?
Well, I think I do believe that it's going to be more severe than the '08 crash. We're talking about a recession that has been unequaled since the First World War. So, in terms of the need for our services, I'm guessing that they're going to be greater than ever before. Certainly in my lifetime. Are we seeing that need? Yes, we're just starting to hear the stories particularly over the last week or so. People really desperate for cash, really need to get their hands on some money, and it's not always that they don't want to go out and buy a flash car or book their holidays. They simply want to buy some food or pay some electricity bills or gas. These are just basic needs. They're not people that are spending money extravagantly. These are just normal people looking to get their hands on some cash to see them through over the next few weeks. And I do believe that, we've been closed, obviously. We've maintained a telephone service over the last few weeks, so we haven't actually come into contact with anyone. But I do believe that going forward, although in the short term, over the last sort of month, and certainly over the next month or so, it will be quieter than normal. But as the restrictions are lifted on people's movements, then I think we're going to see a real surge for obvious reasons.
Perfect. And also, I mean, you before you were doing this, you were a property developer, and I guess you still are now. How are you? Obviously, how are you finding that market? Have you got any advice and any thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I mean, that's sort of. I think the problem is no one actually really knows where that market is right now. All we can be assured of is it's not where it was 6 months ago. And it wasn't great, to be quite honest with you, then. So I really tread on the side of caution in terms of any investments around property. Is it back from where it was 6 months ago? It certainly is. Is it 10% behind? I don't know. Is it 20% behind? I don't know. If someone said to me it was 30 or 40% behind, it was the figures they were 6 months ago, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, to be quite honest with you. I mean, who's out there with the money to buy some of these?
I think that's the problem, really, isn't it? That it's almost impossible to put a number on it because of the inability to transact. I think if people could transact, could transact fluidly, then you could argue it's probably not down at all. But because of the inability to transact, it's just as easy to argue that you could be looking at 40% discount because there's so few people wanting to buy. But what I've found from the property businesses I'm involved in is, even if you've got a willing seller, who's happy to transact at a price which would effectively imply the property market is substantially down, we're unable to see the deal through anyway, because of either lawyers or surveyors or the inability for the people to move in and out of properties due to lack of essential travel.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it's just nothing's happening. I mean, my parents want to put their place on the market at the moment, and there's just no one. There's no agents coming out. You can't get a survey. Everything's totally locked at the moment. So in terms of can you sell a property today, the answer is no, you can't, because you can't even advertise it. So where is it going to be? I don't know. I mean, I spoke to an auctioneer, actually, quite one of the well-known ones, London-based firm, and it was about 3 weeks ago. So just as this was really beginning to sort of bite us, and I said to him, well, he had a property coming up for auction. I think it was that week, and I said, well, surely this is going to be behind now, isn't it? You're going to lower the guides on it. He said, well, no, we're not lowering the guides because we don't know where the guides are. So, and he was right, really. You can't, the market will find itself. We can't determine the market. It will level out to what it is, and then people will know about it and cotton onto it and act accordingly. And then that's when you make some money. I mean, if you were to invest in property at the moment, you'd be pulling, you're pulling numbers from the air, to be quite honest with you. And you'd be a brave man to do so. And there are brave men out there that will earn a lot of money out of this. I mean, someone once said to me, no one ever earned any money on a level playing field. And to a certain extent, it's right. People are going to earn a shed load of money out of this situation. If you've got money out there and you can invest in property, there's going to be deals to be had. It's going to be, but there are going to be a lot of good people as well that have been savvy buyers going to fall by the wayside, but being over leveraged at this time. They might have a heavy portfolio of property that is been, that they're over leveraged on. They're going to find the bite that's going to bite. Interest rates going up. There's all sorts of scenarios that are going to play out that are going to affect some really savvy people, and they're going to go under. There's no doubt about it.
There's a question I forgot to ask you, actually, when we were just talking about the pawnbroking side of things a minute ago, which was how many of the loans actually, percentage-wise, actually redeem, and how many do you actually have to enforce the asset sale on?
Well, it's about 80% actually come, either redeem or renew the loan and go ahead. 20% of the clients don't pay back. Some of them don't want to pay back. Probably most of them, they might be happy to let their goods go. I'm sure out of the 20%, so that, out of every 100, it's 20 people. A percentage of those 20 people are probably going to be a little bit narked at the fact that their items are going to be sold. But at the end of the day, what I really liked and what appealed to me about the business is that you're not making anyone homeless. You're not giving them a bad credit rating. Once you've sold their watch or their ring, unless they're sentimentally attached to that item, then they can start again. You've actually released them of the burden of the debt. And in some cases, if you sell it for more than what is owed, then they're going to actually be in funds. So there's that to consider as well. I mean, I always advise people not to come in with something that you're sentimentally attached to. And if it's a car or something, you can go out and buy another. If you make money again, you can go out and buy another Mercedes or it can be replaced. If you're talking about a wedding ring or an engagement ring, that's something a little bit different. It's a bit personal, and I always tell people when they come in, think long and hard about doing this particular item, because there may be a chance that we may have to go to market with it. We try and avoid it at all costs, because we don't want to sell. I don't want to be a shopkeeper. I didn't set it up, with the idea of selling people's belongings, because that's not what it's all about. It's all about lending money to people and earning money out of the interest. And if you sell someone's goods, then you've potentially lost that client. And I've paid to get that client. I've been on TV, I've advertised, I've spent money on Google. Why would I want to sell their goods? What's the advantage? You've lost the client if you sell their goods. No one's got an endless pit of goods to sell,
Very good, very interesting concepts, which I think can be applied to any business, really. So what's the future? What does the future hold for you? Kind of post Corona and looking forward. Where can the viewers see you again? What deals are you doing?
Well, we're just what we're doing now. Well, we were doing it prior to this scenario. We were looking at expanding the brand and opening more and more stores. We just got one about to open in the lanes down in Brighton. I think I spoke to you before we went on air. We were talking about coming up to. We've got a store in Manchester, which is doing very well on Deansgate. But we're looking at other locations. Harrogate, as I said to you before we went out on air, was a location that was mentioned to me. And as I said, we want to get up there and have a little look around. There are a number of locations that we can look at. And I think it's about time for the business to grow. And I haven't rushed it in terms of what I've achieved in terms of the store openings. Anyway, we've done it sort of fairly organically and grown it pretty much with our own money up until recently. So we've sort of we've taken it steady, and I think it's been a safe way of growing. We haven't put ourselves in any danger economically or over leveraged in any way. And I think that's really the future. Look at opening more and more stores in the UK. We're looking at franchising ideas, or even maybe opening abroad. We've got talks with people from other countries that are interested in taking on the brand. So it's going to be a really exciting time. And obviously, with what's going on economically, as we've just discussed, there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Perfect. Well, listen, James, it's been great to have you here. Thank you very much for taking time out. I'm sure, despite everything that's going on, you've got pretty full days all the same. And for the guys at home and for the guys listening, other than watching you on Channel 4, give yourself a shout out. Where else can they find you? Where are you on social?
We're on Insta. We're on the usual Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So yeah, you can find us there. For Prestige Pawnbrokers, Posh Pawn, you can find us, and we'll give you updates of what we do, what's coming, any interesting items that have come into the stores. There's also an online store you can go to if you don't want to go out and you're interested in buying any of the products. You can go on there, purchase anything that we sort of all the goods that we deal in.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, buddy. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks for everyone who's taken part in the live. And as always, if you've enjoyed these, make sure you subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on Spotify, whichever method you listen to your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, and you'll find me, the Matt Haycox, TheMattHaycox, on pretty much all the social channels. So thanks again, James. I'll see you soon.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you.
Bye.